미안해.
What kind of soul-crushing despair must a grown man go through to take such a drastic, irreversible step, despite everyone trying to stop him? The film I'm about to break down isn't just based on a true story, it's a wild roller coaster of twist after twist after twist. Just when you're ready to curse someone out, the movie slaps you with another reveal that makes you swallow your words. It all began on a rainy night 15 years ago. Detective Hyun-gu was hot on the trail of a serial killer who exclusively targeted women, but instead of catching the killer, he got ambushed, stabbed multiple times and left for dead. But here's the thing, the killer didn't finish him off. Instead, he left a scar on Hyun-gu's face like a trophy, a sick badge of honor.
아직 안 죽여. 넌 날 피할 좋은 광고판이니까.
From that night on, the killer vanished without a trace, and Hyun-gu spent the next 15 years haunted by that scar and that night, but never found even the faintest clue. Eventually, the statute of limitations expired. One of the victim's family members, Hyun-sik, couldn't accept that the killer would walk free. So, in utter despair, he turned to a drastic, irreversible act, and that's how the film opens. But here's what makes it even more gut-wrenching. Hyun-gu himself was also a victim's family. The last woman killed was his girlfriend, Soo-yeon, and out of all the victims, her body was the only one never recovered. What he never saw coming 17 years later, a man named Park Si-hoo suddenly came forward, claiming to be the long-lost serial killer. He even drops a tell-all book describing each and every murder in graphic detail. His reason? He says the law can't touch him anymore, so he just wants to confess and apologize to the victims' families.
잘못했습니다. 선생님.
Sounds noble? Don't be fooled. One look at Park Si-hoo's smug face and you know this dude isn't sorry. He's reveling in the attention, riding the media wave to boost his book sales. And boy, did it work! The confession book, I Am the Killer, sold out instantly. Wanna know what's even more twisted? The guy's good looking and now he's got an army of fangirls drooling over him, totally ignoring the fact that he raped and murdered women. It's like society just decided, if he's hot, he can't be that bad. The only person who can prove Park Si-hoo was the real killer is Hyun-gu. He once shot the killer in the shoulder during a struggle, and Park? He proudly shows off his shoulder scar, using it as proof, even bringing TV crews to the police station for a public apology. One of his fangirls even copped a feel. Watching all this unfold, Hyun-gu is boiling with rage. He flings a half-eaten bowl of noodles right in Park's smug face, but the media spins it, making Park look like the calm, forgiving hero when that image sends his book sales soaring to a mind-blowing 20 billion won. From killer to celebrity, Park becomes a national obsession. He's now a full-blown star, complete with a dozen bodyguards even when he goes swimming. But karma? Oh, it doesn't forget. The second he dives into the pool, a janitor releases a hidden stash of venomous snakes into the water. The guards are still chatting poolside, totally unaware of the horror unfolding just beneath the surface, until Park starts screaming. They yank him out in time, but the venom's already working through his system. An ambulance already waiting outside rushes him to emergency care, injecting him with anti-venom before racing off. But just then another ambulance pulled up to the scene. Tension exploded in an instant. The two sides locked eyes, no one speaking clearly, until one of the men suddenly pulled out a knife. He covered for his teammates, broke away from the bodyguards, and took off running, sprinting all the way to catch up with the ambulance. The kidnapping took place within Hyun-gu's jurisdiction. Rushing to the scene, Hyun-gu discovered something shocking. The people who kidnapped Park Si-hoo weren't robbers or killers, they were the families of the women he murdered 17 years ago. 10 women had died back then. Their families were shattered, left with nothing but grief. But they clung to each other, shared their pain, and somehow kept going. For years, they thought the killer had vanished forever until he suddenly reappeared and paraded his crimes on national TV. In that moment, those families found a new reason to live: revenge. They'd seen Park Si-hoo's smug, remorseless face at his so-called apology event, watched as the media sugarcoated everything, even suggesting the victims' families should forgive and move on. The more the media painted Park as a misunderstood soul who turned his life around, the deeper the rage grew in the hearts of those he'd hurt. So they formed their own secret alliance, a revenge squad, and planned this abduction down to the last detail. But now, Hyun-gu and the bodyguards were both in hot pursuit. The guards even tried to ram their car off the road. Luckily, a backup vehicle swooped in and blocked them, but they didn't count on Hyun-gu still tailing them. Inside the van, Park Si-hoo slowly came to. He spotted a scalpel and tried to grab it, planning to strike back. But Karma had other ideas. The scalpel slipped during the chaos and stabbed him instead. Wounded but not giving up, he held onto the blade, waiting for the right moment. But Hyun-gu beat him to the punch, slamming the van and blasting the back door open. Park lunged in desperation, only to fall and slam right onto the hood of Hyun-gu's car. But the Avengers weren't backing down now. Their leader, Do-hyuk, charged at Park with a blade, ready to go all the way. What no one expected. Park Si-hoo's bodyguards chased after them with everything they had. Park thought he had made it out, but the revenge crew struck again, turning the scene into utter chaos. These people weren't just angry, they were prepared to die for justice. Working together like a well-oiled machine, they executed a sharp maneuver that let them recapture Park once again.
내 딸 알지? 정수연.
And leading the charge this time? Soo-yeon's mother, a wealthy, sharp, and unrelenting woman. 17 years ago, she had strongly opposed Soo-yeon's relationship with Hyun-gu, not just because of their class difference, but because he was the cop investigating the serial murders. She feared her daughter would be in danger. She was right. Soo-yeon became the killer's final victim and the only one whose body was never found. Then, suddenly, the power in the house went out. Total darkness. Panic swept through the room, and that's when they saw it, something terrifying.
이거이네 놀래라
Do-hyuk nearly wet himself at the sight of the masked intruder. None of them realized this stranger had night vision gear, and he wasn't here to hurt them. He was here to rescue Park Si-hoo. Soo-yeon's mother lunged toward the shadows, but missed. By the time they realized what was happening, Park Si-hoo had already been dragged out. They bolted after him, adrenaline spiking. Outside, they saw a masked figure sprinting away with Park thrown over his shoulder. Could it be that this serial killer still has accomplices? Without wasting a second, the group geared up and charged out after him. First, they unleashed their trained hunting dogs, sprinting full speed in pursuit. Close behind, Eun-ju, the group's sharpshooter, took aim with her trusty crossbow and fired without hesitation. Just as the masked man was about to reach the getaway car, Thwak Eun-ju released a deadly shot. But in a crazy twist of fate, one of the attack dogs jumped in at the last second and ended up saving the masked intruder's life. And just like that, the mystery man escaped with Park Si-hoo in tow. Later, Park showed up at the hospital and downplayed the whole thing, saying it was just a stunt pulled by some over-enthusiastic fans. He said he wouldn't press charges, and the media praised his grace and generosity like he was some kind of saint. Meanwhile, back at the station, Hyun-gu was looking rough, fresh wounds on his forehead. The chief immediately suspected that Hyun-gu had helped Park Si-hoo escape. Hyun-gu denied everything until she walked in. Soo-yeon's mother, the grieving, powerful woman who had lost her only daughter. One look at Hyun-gu, the broken fingernails, the scratch on his neck, and most of all, the guilt in his eyes, and she knew he was the masked man who helped Park Si-hoo escape. She couldn't believe it. After all, she and Hyun-gu were both victims' families. Her daughter had loved this man with all her heart. He could have taken the chance to get justice, even find out what happened to Soo-yeon, the only victim whose body was never found. But instead, he let the killer go. Why? Because Hyun-gu had a plan. He wanted to expose Park Si-hoo's fake persona in front of the entire nation. Expose him for what he truly was, not a repenting criminal, but a handsome devil who used his looks to twist public opinion. Too many people had started to believe that if someone's good-looking, they can't be that evil, that somehow charm and cheekbones erased 10 murders. Some still fought back, called him out, said he only committed those murders to write a bestseller and cash in on the fame. But his defense attorney claimed Park Si-hoo had cried during his confession, said he'd truly changed. And hey, if his book sales were skyrocketing, wasn't that a win for the publishing industry? Wasn't that, in some twisted way, giving back to society? Hyun-gu doesn't think so. To him, it was outrageous, a serial killer of women walking free, smiling on TV, making millions. This wasn't justice, it was a sick fairy tale. And one thing still didn't sit right: the final victim's body, Soo-yeon's, was never found. Unless Park could tell them exactly where her remains were. Hyun-gu believed the whole thing was a scam, that he wasn't the real killer, just a fraud using these confessions to make a fortune. If that's true, then Park Si-hoo could be arrested for fraud. And sitting in front of her TV, Soo-yeon's mother finally understood what Hyun-gu was doing. After all, Hyun-gu never actually saw the killer's face back then, so if Park reveals where Soo-yeon's body is, it proves he's the killer and justice can be served. If he refuses, then he's a con man, and prison still awaits him. Either way, it's a double-edged sword. Just when things were heating up, the show's producers pulled a stunt to ease the tension. They opened the floor to live audience questions, but no one expected what happened next. A man calling himself Mr. J suddenly claimed that Park Si-hoo wasn't the real killer he was. He declared on live TV that Park was a complete fraud, just as Hyun-gu had said.
지금까지 내가 안 잡힌 이유니까.
예?
이두서 쇼하지 마라.
The audience gasped. Victims' families watching at home were completely shaken. Wait, what? Another killer? Now! Hyun-gu acted fast. He'd already set up a trace on the phone line. Within seconds, his team tracked the call's origin, but what they didn't expect. The call came from Hyun-gu's own house. Racing home, Hyun-gu found the phone lying on the floor, and a chilling note on the wall. I told you piss me off again, and I'll kill your mother. That wasn't just a threat, it was a word-for-word message the killer had warned him with years ago. Heart-pounding, Hyun-gu feared the worst as he stepped into the pitch-black house, but then his mother appeared, alive, unharmed. Turns out, this was just a final warning. If Hyun-gu kept digging, the killer wouldn't hold back next time. Then, Hyun-gu saw it. Across the street, a shadowy figure stood watching from a nearby window. He rushed over, but the room was empty. All that remained was a rusty dagger and a videotape. Meanwhile, the revenge squad realized something was wrong. Eunju was missing. Still consumed by grief over her mother's death, Eunju had snuck off with a sniper-grade crossbow. Waiting outside the TV station, she had no idea what had just unfolded on the live broadcast. Fueled by rage, she spotted Park Si-hoo surrounded by press and let the arrow fly. It hit his chest, but not a fatal shot. She was immediately swarmed and arrested on the spot. Strangely though, Park Si-hoo once again forgave his attacker. He called it karmic justice for the sins he'd committed, said he would drop the charges, forgive Eunju, and even donated all his 20 billion won book profits to charity. The media praised him again. Even the victims' families were stunned, but only Hyun-gu, who had just received the mystery videotape, knew the awful truth. The footage showed Soo-yeon bound, tortured, and crying out in pain. It shattered him. The girl he loved was truly gone, and her last request, caught on tape, was to simply hear Hyun-gu's voice one last time. Unable to save her, all Hyun-gu could do was play the tape over and over, desperate to find any clue hidden in her final moments. He listened all night and finally, he noticed something. There was a sound, a detail, a clue. Hyun-gu called a press conference the next morning. There, he announced that the dagger left behind by Mr. J had traces of blood, and that blood matched the wounds Hyun-gu suffered 17 years ago. The press exploded. Was Park Si-hoo really a fraud? But then Hyun-gu threw them another curveball. I'm not sure, because the bullet pulled from Park Si-hoo's shoulder also matched his service weapon from back then. And what's more, the details in Park's book matched the real cases exactly. Suddenly, there were two possible killers. The case went viral across the country. No one, not even the police, could figure out who was telling the truth. Under pressure, Park Si-hoo held another press conference. He claimed that during his kidnapping, someone broke into his home and stole his knife and diary, which meant someone wanted his identity, not his wealth. Park accused Mr. J of stealing his weapons and trying to take his place, but somewhere in the shadows, the real Mr. J was watching. Hearing Park call him a rookie, someone just riding his coattails lit a fire in him, and that's when things took a turn no one saw coming. The two men claiming to be the real killer were now going head-to-head live through the media, and the mysterious Mr. J wasn't holding back. He declared that the statute of limitations had expired, so he no longer feared the law, and he was ready to appear on TV with Hyun-gu to tear off Park Si-hoo's fake mask in front of the entire nation. This deeply ironic moment was unfolding right before everyone's eyes. As victims' families, they just couldn't take it anymore. They had watched these men exploit their grief for attention, money, and spectacle. They weren't going to stay silent anymore. At the televised debate, they came prepared. Leading the charge was Soo-yeon's mother. She'd filled a pen with lethal snake venom. The plan was simple. Once the real killer revealed himself, she would strike. Then, Mr. J arrived with the world watching, all eyes on him. For the first time, he removed his mask and turned to Hyun-gu with confidence. You're about to find out who the real killer is. Earlier, Mr. J had secretly contacted the TV station and marked a tree buried beneath it. He claimed, was the body of the final victim, Soo-yeon. The broadcast cut live to the scene, and there it was, a woman's remains, unearthed. Soo-yeon's mother trembled as she watched her daughter's skeleton exposed on national television.
정수연은
실종 당시 흰색 코트를 입고 있었습니다.
Hyung-gu, gripped by rage and heartbreak, was ready to strike right then and there, but just as he moved, the network cut to commercial. Backstage, the station director screamed at the producer, "What the hell are you doing? This has completely crossed the moral line. Why are we still airing this?" The director didn't care. Ratings were through the roof. He fired the producer on the spot and ordered the broadcast to continue. Outside the studio, chaos erupted. Park Si-hoo's crazed fangirls were screaming his name, claiming he had to be the real killer. Even if Soo-yeon wasn't his victim, the others surely were. To them, Park wasn't a criminal. He was their idol, their god. Back inside the studio, Park Si-hoo calmly dropped a bombshell. "Everything I said before, it was all a lie. That book, I Am the Killer, I didn't write it. The real author was Hyung-gu." The whole truth finally unraveled. The entire saga was a setup orchestrated by Hyung-gu and Park together, because Park Si-hoo was actually Hyun-sik, the son of the first victim. Yes, it was young Hyun-sik, the one who seemed to have taken his own life at the very beginning, but he hadn't died. He survived horribly disfigured. From that moment on, Hyung-gu made a decision. He would use Hyun-sik's death as bait to lure up the true killer. The hospital director, himself a victim's family member, helped Hyun-sik undergo plastic surgery, turning him into the fake killer, Park Si-hoo. Then, they pushed this fabricated persona into the media spotlight, letting the real killer watch and rage as someone else enjoyed fame and fortune off his crimes. Because years ago, the real killer had spared Hyung-gu only on one condition: Hyung-gu would live on as his witness, his trophy. The killer was vain, arrogant. He couldn't stand the thought of someone else getting praise for his murders. And it worked. That's why Hyung-gu had rescued Park so many times, but the killer didn't care. He laughed it off. "So what if I came out? The statute of limitations is over. You can't touch me." But he forgot one thing: God doesn't forgive arrogance. Hyung-gu pulled up the videotape, the one the killer had left behind, the one showing Soo-yeon's final moments. In the background of the video, a faint sound. A TV broadcast a presidential funeral, specifically, the memorial for Korea's 14th president. After covering his tracks in every possible way, the killer finally realized his time was up.
내가 1992년 12월 19일 자정, 지금 시각이 2007년 12월 18일 11시 46분. 아직 공소시효가 14분 정도 남아있다. 이런 똑같은 새끼야!
As Hyung-gu stormed toward him with a gun, full of fury, the once arrogant killer dropped to his knees, begging for mercy. He started repeating the exact words Soo-yeon had spoken before her death. That's when it hit Hyung-gu. The killer hadn't murdered Soo-yeon immediately. He had kept her imprisoned for 2 full years. And during that time, she never stopped thinking about Hyung-gu, never stopped hoping he'd come for her. Listening to Soo-yeon's final words, Hyung-gu was torn apart by rage and sorrow. His mind spiraled. In front of him, the killer's face began to blur, transforming into Soo-yeon's. Then she laughed. A cold, haunting laugh that snapped him back to reality. The truth was unbearable. Soo-yeon had been tortured and violated for 2 years. When the killer realized the begging wasn't working, he dropped the act and revealed his true self.
수연이가 애를 가졌더라고.
추잡하게 이러면 안 되지 내가. 그지? 그럼 수연이한테 너무 미안하잖아 내가. 너랑 나 여기서 끝내자 이 좀 많은 새끼.
Hyung-gu pulled the trigger, ready to end it, but before he could fire, a colleague tackled him. The bullet missed, shattered the studio lights, and chaos erupted. Soo-yeon's mother, driven by revenge, chased after him, but ended up being overpowered and taken hostage. Once again, it came down to Hyung-gu. Thankfully, Park Si-hoo had anticipated the killer's route and was already hiding in the elevator, waiting for him. What he didn't expect was how quick and deadly the killer still was. No wonder he had once overpowered Hyung-gu. The killer slipped out, broke through the defenses, and ran for a car, but the revenge squad struck again. A forklift slammed into the car, but somehow, his luck held out. A delivery driver happened to pass by, giving him the perfect opening. After narrowly surviving, he seized the delivery man's motorcycle and sped off. Hyung-gu wasn't letting him go this time. He got into a truck and chased him at full speed. He caught up and slammed into him, thinking it was over, but there was no body. The killer had broken through the windshield, climbed into the truck, and kicked Hyung-gu out of the driver's seat. Park Si-hoo arrived just in time, ramming his car into the truck and blocking its path. Hyun-gu aimed and shot up the tires. The truck lost control and rolled off the road. The final fight broke out, fueled by years of anger. Hyun-gu overpowered the killer. He grabbed exposed wires from the wrecked truck and began choking him, determined to end it with his own hands, but his fellow officers pulled him back. "Don't waste your life on this scum," they shouted. "He's not worth it." The killer was arrested, but he smiled. Because the statute of limitations was nearly over, he believed he would walk free, without ever being judged for his crimes. But the victims' families weren't about to let the killer walk away. One of them even lunged forward, gripping a shard of glass, ready to stab him on the spot. The scene spiraled into chaos. Police swarmed in to protect the killer, keeping everyone at a distance. What they didn't notice was Soo-yeon's mother quietly making her way through the crowd. And just as she was about to strike, someone grabbed her hand. It was Hyun-gu. Her eyes filled with shock. She never expected him to be the one stopping her. Hyun-gu's heart was breaking, but his mind was clear. He knew what he had to do. When he pried the poison pen from her hand, it felt like he was tearing himself in two, torn between duty and revenge. But then, he looked over and saw the killer smiling again. That same smug, mocking grin, laughing at the pain of the families. That's when Hyun-gu knew this man would never stop, and he would never regret. Suddenly, the killer froze. A sharp pain shot through his chest. No one could have gotten that close to him, except a cop. And Hyun-gu was no longer just a cop. He was a grieving man, a man who had lost the woman he loved. From the moment he began this whole plan, he stopped being just a detective. He became a weapon of vengeance. Five years later, Hyun-gu walked out of prison, convicted of intentional assault. Waiting outside wasn't just the press. All the victims' families were there, and at the front of the crowd stood Soo-yeon's mother. She stepped forward, held out a small box, and handed him the watch that Soo-yeon never got the chance to give him.